I know why you're single. And the reason I know this is because I know why I'm single, because I have made so many dating mistakes, which is just such a temptation to fall into repetitively. And it's a pattern that you end up in, which ends you up in the wrong relationships, the wrong kind of dating scenarios or situationships, and dating from a place without a shared vision, without a goal, and without purpose. And this can be really painful when you have a desire to find your person, but you find yourself in these ruts of relationships and it just doesn't feel like you can move forward or find the right person. So today I'm going to share 5 common dating mistakes that a lot of us have made and a lot of us continue to make, which might be stopping us from finding our right person and from being the right person with the right messaging, the right energy, the right magnetism to also attract that right relationship for us. And the topic of dating mistakes to avoid is something that I get asked by a lot of young adults, and I really try to impart the wisdom that I only know through my own experience. And the reason I do these videos is because I don't want you guys to make the same mistakes, because it costs you time, it costs you energy, it costs you emotional capacity. My desire is to share all of the wrong ways that I have and that I see people continue to date, so that we can go out there and be really healthy in our dating lives and approach it from the right way. And I'm also blessed to be able to talk about this from a very Christian perspective as well. It's not always the place that I've been dating from, but having really lent into my faith, I'm a Catholic, and really understanding God's design for love, God's design for men and women, God's design for marriage has just made me realize how much society has distorted so many of our ideas and just taught us like the opposite way that we should be. So let's get started. The first and biggest mistake that we make in dating is getting too serious too soon. As I mentioned, returning to my Christian faith really helped me to see the absolute beauty of marriage. Unfortunately, this came at a price for me, because it meant that I really idolized marriage to such a degree where I was just so desperate to be married and desperate to find my person and to start that family life, enter into that vocation, that I wasn't really seeing men for like who they were holistically. I was more seeing them like, how would he be as a husband? How would he be as a father? It was all very much like this package deal. And this is all before I even really knew the person. I was basically seeing these men as a lifestyle rather than a soul, rather than someone who was created in the image and likeness of God. And in the secular world, we see this because people enter into relationships for many different types of benefits. Of course, companionship is one, but there's financial benefits. That's why people cohabit before getting married, because they're like, well, it's half the rent, etc. People obviously get into relationships to have that physical affection, to have company, to have a +1. Like there's this whole kind of lifestyle that being in a relationship offers you. And when you look at it and approach it like that, you're completely missing that this is a person, a human person in front of you, and you're not allowing yourself to get to know them fully and wholly. You're just seeing them as an avenue to like your vocation. And although I'm not talking about the physical objectification of anyone, this is still objectifying someone. And there's a really lovely quote that I love from Venerable Fulton Sheen, which says, "You must remember to love people and use things, rather than to love things and use people." And the reason I love that is because I think that we're living in a time when people indulge in the mini marriage. They enter into these relationships, they get very serious very quickly, they move in together, they are potentially sleeping together before marriage, they are, sharing bank accounts, they're splitting finances, they're going on holiday together, they're meeting the families, and they're doing all of this before there's any actual tangible commitment. And then this breeds a culture of mini divorce. And you have all these broken people that are going through these really painful breakups because they have been living essentially a marriage without the sacrament that, a marriage within the Catholic Church is, for example, that lifelong commitment that I promise to love you, an imperfect person. I promise to love you as an imperfect person myself. And I promise to just love your flaws and to see you through it. And when things get hard, we will try and we will try and we will try. While people who live these mini marriages in non-committed relationships, even if you call it serious or exclusive, you can walk away at any time. And that breeds this really painful culture of, like divorce. But of course, it's really tempting to want to get serious with someone. When you like someone, when you love them, you want to spend all this time with them. And you know, God created us to desire another. You know, when Adam saw Eve, he was like, finally, flesh of my flesh, bone of my bone. And you can tell he is just so chuffed to have seen Eve. And God saw that he needed that complementarity. Like God said, it is not good for man to be alone. So God knows we have this desire for another person, but we have to discern and we have to withhold that whole desire to give ourselves and to take another until that real commitment of marriage, which is lifelong. So I do think we are getting exclusive way too quickly before we really know a person, understand our own compatibility, and also the shared vision, you know, because I think it's really easy to just be like, I like this person, I want to lock it down, that's it. And I'm not saying that doesn't work sometimes, but there's too much of a, I want to be in a relationship and I rush into it and I completely go for it. So in the same way, I want to, you know, encourage you to not expect exclusivity straight away, like to just trust the process, that when you meet someone and you're going on dates, you can really just get to know them. You can build that firm foundation of friendship. It doesn't need to be date 2, like, okay, you're my boyfriend, you're my girlfriend. And it just, you know, then turns into this whirlwind of a romance, because you need to have that discernment and that companion love that builds before anything else. Another thing that Fulton Sheen talks about is the difference between personal love and sexual love. And I like this because personal love is directed to the totality of the person. That means that that person is completely irreplaceable. Like each one of us is irreplaceable. So when you have that personal love, you are seeing that person for their total self, and you will never be able to replace that person. While sexual love is the personal satisfaction that we derive from another person, and that is actually replaceable. And obviously I'm not talking about it from a sexual point of view, because I don't believe in sex before marriage. But what I do mean by that is we can love people in that way because of the satisfaction that we get ourselves, and that is a replaceable feeling. And I think it's really important when we're discerning someone that we're dating to think, do I love this person for them or do I love them for me? And that is a question I definitely needed to ask myself when I've been in relationships that I felt good in purely because I liked being in a relationship rather than for that person. And that is a selfish place to date from. Number 2 is using physical affection to build an emotional connection. How many of us are guilty of doing this? You know, it's like you like someone and then you start holding their hands or linking arms or whatever, and that physical closeness builds an emotional closeness, right? And it's like a domino effect. But Pope John Paul II, in his Theology of the Body, he really talks about this in a beautiful way, and it can be summarized by this line, which is that physical affection should express trust and emotional intimacy that already exists, rather than creating an emotional attachment using that physical intimacy. So physical intimacy is meant to be an outward expression of something that you've already built, a foundation that already exists. It's not meant to be the avenue to get there. And so many of us fall for this trap where we use that, because obviously, like scientifically, biologically, oxytocin really bonds you to a person. So when you are snuggly, cuddling, holding hands, that just immediately makes you feel closer to that person. But it's not the right discernment, and it can be a confusing thing because your body actually gets addicted to that. You know, they talk today about the epidemic of loneliness and touch starvation. So actually when we're doing that, we're confusing ourselves, and, you know, not even talking about it from an inappropriate touch level, but there's still that degree where it's hard to separate from that feeling, because it is lovely to be physically close to another person. So really discern when is the right step to become a little bit more physically affectionate with someone, because it can just be a trap of feeling really close with someone but not on a firm, solid foundation. It can be a house of cards. Number 3 is using marital logic when you're dating. You really shouldn't feel like you need to force it at this point. I have also been in the situation where I've known something's not right, but I have just been grasping because I've wanted it to be right so badly. And the thing is that love needs to be given freely. It's a free gift. So you can't force it. It doesn't have to work. Of course, when you're married, it is work, and it's constant work, and it's a constant choice to love that person and to really put them above yourself, to will their good, etc. But when you're dating, you don't need to live in that same kind of way. You can walk away if it's wrong. And how many people have wasted months, years in the wrong relationships just because they didn't want to start from scratch again? It's like this false investment fallacy where you feel like, well, I've invested a year, so I've got to make it work, when deep down you will know, like your gut knows, God obviously knows. So like you need to pray about it and also feel how your body feels about it, because your gut really does tell you when something is off, and you don't need to force it in dating. Because otherwise it's just a surefire way to become emotionally depleted and to really feel as if you walked away from the relationship, it would be a failure. And it won't be a failure. Like, there's something incredibly mature when you can say, this was good, but it wasn't right. And if you can do that healthily, and also if you can discern, hopefully you're dating good people, so it's not as if it feels this scarcity mindset of, this is a good person, what if I never find a good person again? Like, hopefully we are in healthy dating relationships where we're able to discern between good people, just the right one for us, and us being the right one for them. Number 4 is dating during a time of transition. And that means anything from going to university and you've just left home for the first time, like that's a huge deal. Or converting to the faith. That's something that happened to me. As I mentioned, I had this heart conversion, this reversion back to my Catholic faith, and suddenly I was like, oh, I get it. I get what marriage is about. I get what relationships are about, and I want that. And it was such a whirlwind time for me, and I was learning so much so quickly and so rapidly. I was in this wild time of transition. Or people who've just gone through a breakup. Like, these times of transition, when your life is all like this, it's not the right time to date, because you're dating from an imbalanced place where you're not grounded, you don't have level footing, and you can just be a bit emotionally volatile. And that definitely happened to me in my early years of my reversion, as I mentioned, because I just was like, I want that. And it's almost like I was seeing red. I was like seeing, like, I need to fall in love, I need to get married, because I finally realized, like, things I've been learning about love and relationships from the world were completely wrong. And that was a beautiful thing to learn, but I shouldn't have just thrown myself into the dating world, because I wasn't ready. I wasn't grounded. My feet were completely like up in the air. So be wary when you're in a time of transition, because that can be a vulnerable space for you, where maybe you don't understand your own boundaries, you don't understand your own vision, you are just looking for a constant. You're looking for something because your life is like this, and you need to find rootedness. But to search for that in another person is way too much pressure, especially at the dating stage. So just take a minute and try to level yourself out before putting yourself out there. And the last one is talking about your dating life, in too much detail or too openly. It's so hard to avoid gossip, but gossip is just such a terrible thing. So you want to really avoid naming names. You don't need to go into detail of why you said no to someone or walked away from a relationship, especially if you're in a social circle where people might know each other. Of course, it's different. There's a caveat if out of charity, it would be good for you to, warn someone about a serious issue that person might be facing. For example, maybe they're going through an addiction and you've noticed that they are putting themselves out there in the dating world, but you know that that wouldn't be a right thing if they ended up with another person at that time. But in general, talking about your dating life too much and bringing too much detail in, it's just a recipe for having way too many opinions from other people when you're trying to discern yourself. And while it's good, of course, to bring in trusted people that you love, who know you, into some of the discernment, I think when we create a bit of like a drama out of it, like a reality TV show out of our dating lives, or that concept of, just do it for the story, or it'll make such a funny story. We're not dating from a place of authenticity. We're dating either from a place of, wow, this is going to be so entertaining to tell, or a place of just not respecting the other person, talking about them in a way that it could get back to them. And I've certainly been guilty of this because it's difficult. You do want to share your experiences and stuff with friends, but there's a level of discretion that I think in dating which would actually make everyone more confident, because people would feel less afraid to be rejected, because they'd know that it would just be a discreet no. Like if someone were to say, I'm not interested in you, but thank you so much for asking, it wouldn't be like, oh my gosh, then they're calling their friends and saying, can you believe so-and-so asked me out? Because if we take that out of dating culture, I think it will really encourage more people to be more courageous about dating because they won't feel so scrutinized or out there. So in conclusion, those are 5 dating mistakes I would really implore you to avoid. I would love to hear in the comments if you have any more. I'm sure there's an exhaustible list, but those are the 5 that really come to mind when I think about the mistakes that I've made and things I really want to avoid in future and that I would hope to impart to others, because dating badly just doesn't end well, and it's exhausting emotionally, physically. Your capacity and your energy to date just feels like, well, it just gets depleted when you're dating in the wrong way. So here is to dating right in a respectful way, knowing that that person that we're dating was created in the image and likeness of God, and having just respect and reverence for that, even if they're not our right person. So I hope this has been helpful, and I will see you soon. All right, God bless. Bye.